There comes a moment, there comes a time before the spotlight.
Old Trafford, as you very rarely see it. Normally, it's packed with thousands of cheering fans, cheering the winners. Now, Bryan Robson, he's a winner. Where does the Bryan Robson story start for you? Well, for me, it starts right here. In this little cabin, the PA room at Old Trafford, 10 years ago, Bryan Robson and I spoke for the first time. He'd just joined Manchester United. Now, 10 years on, it seems remarkable that the story still hasn't finished.
He's a winner in the long run. He's a winner in the long run. He's a winner, he's the strongest one. He's a hand running, a shot from the gun. A big running, a shot from the gun. Just when they thought you were down and out, even when the world began to doubt. Back on your feet, back in the game. The crowd's behind you, and they're calling your name.
Alex, we're talking about Bryan Robson, and you inherited Bryan. I suppose it's a tremendous asset to inherit.
Wonderful inheritance, eh? That's what a father leaving his son £1 million, isn't it? But oh, a marvellous player. I mean, it epitomises the sort of adventurous side of a footballer, doesn't it? It's, you see Bryan playing it, you see it's an adventure watching him. You know, it's so much enthusiasm and sort of a free will, you know, and it's sort of free spirit in the game that it just goes and enjoys it and puts everything into it, and everything puts everything into it. Not a part of his body, it's not used in the game, you know. It's a wonderful thing to see in a game.
Do you use him as an example to young players when you're talking to young boys who are just coming in?
Oh, but we use it to the senior players, never mind the young players. That the final, at the Rumbelowes final, we were disappointed, as you know. But Robson was an example to them all. Even at his age, he was wanting to win that medal.
Bryan, of course, has won 3 FA Cup winners' medals for the club. That's quite an achievement in its own. Now, what do you think he deserves to win? I mean, really, the championship?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's tragic for the club, but it's tragic for Bryan. He's 10 years as captain of our club, and he's not won that trophy yet, you know. But next year, maybe.
Bryan, we're talking football, we're talking Bryan Robson, and we're talking Manchester United. Here we are, 10 years on from the first time that we spoke at Old Trafford. A lot of things have happened in that time. Did you expect to be sitting here 10 years on?
Well, I didn't, but I'm pleased that we're talking Bryan Robson and Manchester United. Ron Atkinson did me a great favour by bringing me here, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's been a great 10 years. But I can remember that first year. I couldn't believe how I got in the team the next game, because after I did the interview with you at the PA system, where we were talking to the whole crowd, I can remember that, Tom. And once I'd signed on the pitch, United then destroyed Wolverhampton Wanderers 5-0, and the player who I was supposed to replace, Sammy McIlroy, had scored a hat-trick, and I'm sitting there in the stand thinking, well, how am I going to get in this team?
You got in the team, and of course things went upwards from then on. I suppose, really, it must have been a tremendous decision for you to make, to leave West Bromwich Albion, where you'd been as a kid, and come to Old Trafford.
Yeah, I had a great 8 years there. I really enjoyed it. The wife was from Birmingham, and I thought that might have been a stumbling block, but I was surprised at Denise's attitude of, you know, well, you know, it's going to be good for your career. So let's move, and it's the first time she'd left the Birmingham area and had to leave her family. But she was willing to do that, so when you get into that situation, that's great that you get your support from the wife, which is very important.
So what's the magic behind Manchester United?
It's definitely the charisma of the club. I mean, when you talk Manchester United to any international player when you're away on international duty, you know, they'll talk about the atmosphere at the club. A lot of people say that being such a big club you can't get a family atmosphere, but I've found out that's a load of rubbish after being here 10 years. You know, I've always found it being a really friendly club. And it's like we've just said, you know, the amount of players who still live around the area, like Paddy Crerand and Dennis Law, you know, Bobby Charlton, they all stay connected with the club. And to me, that just highlights what a great club it is. Well, when I first started watching football, I mean, the England international team, Bobby Charlton, Jack Charlton, you know, they were in the team at that time. And to me, Bobby Charlton and Bobby Moore were the players who I watched England and I always thought were great players.
Nothing to do with Manchester, this, but why is it that the North East produces players like that, the Charltons, the Robsons?
Newcastle, I find, is definitely slightly different to most other places where I've lived in the country or where I've visited for quite a time. To me, up there, the only thing that kids ever want to do is play football. You know, right from when they're young, all you ever see them do is play football. You don't see them play rugby or cricket, any sports like that. Where I think you go through the country in other areas and they do, you know, they tend to play cricket and they tend to play rugby. Up Newcastle, it's total football. And I think that's why you usually get more top players come from Newcastle than many other areas.
Over the 10 years that you've lived in the Manchester area, then you've brought up your own family and you have a son of Robson. Is he going to be a footballer?
I don't know whether he's going to be a footballer. If he wants to be a footballer, I'll encourage him and help him as much as I can. But I'm not the type who would force him into being a footballer if he didn't want to be.
Now, did you notice a big difference? I mean, the club itself, is it so different moving from the Hawthorns to Old Trafford? Are they totally different?
Yes, it is. The one thing I have definitely found since coming to Manchester is when teams play against United and Liverpool, it's more or less like a cup final every week. Everybody wants to beat United, everybody wants to beat Liverpool. So sometimes you play against teams for West Brom and you do get that slightly easier game where people are playing 100 miles an hour when they play against United and against Liverpool. And I think it'll always be that way.
They put more effort into it, in other words?
Yes, they just raise the game that, you know, whether it's 10% or whatever, they just raise the game that little bit more against the two teams. And that's what makes it difficult for players sometimes here, I think, to establish themselves.
We all know about the Bryan Robson string of injuries, but was there ever one that you thought was serious enough to end your career?
The leg injuries, the broken legs have never really bothered me because, touch wood, I've never had a serious broken leg. I mean, some lads get where the bone gets displaced and all this type of thing and they need pins in. And that's when you start worrying. If you need that type of replacement, you've got to be worried about it. Mine have always been hairline fractures, which, unless you're very unfortunate, they're always going to heal okay. So they never really worried me too much. But the time when I dislocated the shoulder, it was against Coventry City in a league match. And we're playing at Old Trafford, and it had been snowing, and the pitch had been cleared a bit, and all the snow was lying at the back of the goals. And I can always remember I was watching a cross which was coming over to the far post, and as I ran to go to the ball just started to drift towards the touchline. And as I went to run, and I leapt up in the air, running at full pace, and I tried to head the ball back across the goals. But by the time I landed, I was about 2 yards off the pitch and running full pelt towards the boardings. Well, I thought it was a great idea at the time to put my foot on the boardings and stop myself dead rather than just jump over the boardings. But as I put my boot onto the boardings, the foot slipped down because of all the snow and everything there. And I gamboled over, and I couldn't really remember too much more apart from lying underneath this boarding with my shoulder out of place. But that's the most painful injury I've ever received as well. And I think the problem with that injury was that it damaged a lot of the nerves in the shoulder as well. So that made the muscles, I just couldn't build the muscles up in the shoulder for a couple of months because they were paralysed because of the nerve damage. So that was a bit of a worry, that one.
As far as Manchester United's been concerned, there's only one trophy which seems to have eluded you, and that's the League Championship. But you are the first skipper in the history of the club to have collected the FA Cup 3 times. Now that must hold a special place of pride in your mind.
Well, the reason why I like that one as well, Tom, is because the FA Cup, everybody knows it's difficult to win a lot of times in your career, because you need that little bit of fortune as well on your side to keep winning the FA Cup. And so I like that record, not because I'm just the first, but I think it's going to be really difficult for anybody to ever surpass that, because of the FA Cup being such a fierce, competitive competition to win.
What's the feeling like? This is the little boy's dream. This is the Bryan Robson of Chesterley Street wanting to be a footballer, and you know what's coming next.
Well,
what's it like when you actually go up those steps to receive the trophy?
A lot of people ask you what the feeling's like when you go and receive it, but it's very difficult to explain. I mean, there's a lot of elation there, and I suppose it's as, how you could put it to people is, however happy you've been in your life and you feel really pleased with yourself in one situation, that is what picking the cup up is like, but you're actually doing it in front of, you know, 50,000 of your supporters who are also feeling exactly like you are at that time. So it's nice to be in that atmosphere as well.
Now, as the skipper of Manchester United and of England, you've also been honoured by the receiving of an award, and you went to meet royalty again for this one.
Well, that was a fabulous day. The one thing I liked about the OBE was I've always classed the football medals and all this type of thing is for your ambition in the game, and your family can look on and you know, be proud as what they want to be, and they can have that. But the OBE to me was for them. You know, it's because of their support and, you know, the way they handle themselves that you receive an award like that. And so to me that award was for all the family. But that's a great day as well, because the 2 daughters and the wife, you know, can go to Buckingham Palace, and it's something which they would probably never have been able to do.
There comes a moment, there comes a time before the spotlight starts to shine, before the crowd starts to roar. He's the first to his feet and first through the door. He's out in the open and out in the light, United red or England white. He's a leader today and a hero tonight. Hero tonight. He's a winner in the long run. He's a winner in the long run. you were down and out, even when the world began to doubt. You're back on your feet, you're back in the game. The crowd's behind you and they're calling your name. He's been around the world and back again, played hard and fell right till the end. Ups and downs have taken their toll, but he's a fighting man who is heart and soul, heart and soul. He's a winner in the long run. He's a winner in the long run. He's a winner, he's the strongest one, and he's up and running, shot from a gun, up and running, shot from a gun. He's a winner in the long run. He's a winner in the long run. He's a winner, he's the strongest one, and he's up and running, a shot from a gun. Up and running, a shot from a gun. He's a winner in the long run. 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 He's a
Martin, Bryan Robson. I suppose everybody knows the name of Bryan Robson, but when did you first become aware of him as a player?
Well, I probably first became aware of Bryan when he first got in the England side when he was playing for West Brom. And of course, he had a fairly big impact on the England side when he first came in. And of course, when Ron Atkinson joined us, he was raving about this midfield player that he had at West Brom and was going to be, for the next 10 years, was going to be the greatest player in English football. And of course, he convinced us of that, because the next thing is we went out and bought him for what was then a record British fee.
Was it a good investment as far as the club was concerned?
It certainly was. It was a lot of money at the time, and I remember sitting down, and obviously Ron had convinced me, and then I had to convince the other directors that he was going to be a good buy. And I can honestly say that we've never regretted it from the moment that we bought him.
What did Ron say that convinced you? I mean, was he so adamant that this was the player he wanted?
Well, what he said was that Bryan Robson was a player for the next 10 years, and that even you know, when he tired in later years, he'd still be able to play at the back in the dinner suit. And he felt that he was going to be the most influential player in the English game over the next 10 years, and I think he's proven to be right.
Bryan is an example, we've said, and he's also been a leader. What does he do on the field that other players don't do?
Well, I think he senses the situation. You know, he senses that when a team's down, he needs to do a bit more. He senses himself, if he's not playing particularly well, that influences people around about him. And I think he's got that great influence and presence that all the great players I've had over the years. They're on the football field and they shine out. They stand out like a beacon. And even if he's not playing well, the influence is so big that others respond.
How important, therefore, has Bryan been to Manchester United?
Well, I mean, it's, at times there was someone did a statistic thing last year when Bryan has not been in the team, because he's had a lot of injuries over the 10 years, and when he's been in the team. And the statistics were trying to point out that if he'd been available for every game, that Manchester United would probably won about 3 or 4 weeks.
That's important.
That's the importance of him.
Now, we're talking primarily Bryan Robson goals, and there must be some Bryan Robson goals which stick in your memory.
Well, there's 1 or 2 great headers he's had in my time, but I prefer to think about 2 goals in particular. Another one I think which was brilliant and marvellous, where you see that Robson's stride, where he lengthens. For a small man, you know, well, not a big man, but from a smallish man, he has a wonderful animal stride, you know, where it opens up. And he went through against Manchester City's ground, Main Road, against Oldham in the semi-final, where 1-0 down again. And the minute he get through and hit the ball and he had his hand in the air right away, and you scored. And that, you know, the ball's not even reached the net and all the supporters are up, because Rob has told them. That is a marvellous, marvellous. I think that dashing sort of a style he has adds to him, you know, adds something to him, you know.
What would you say to the young United supporter now that the future holds at this club for him? What's going to happen to Manchester United in the years which are coming now, in the next 10 years perhaps?
Well, I think this club's only going to get bigger because just the way it's run and the way fans fall into the charisma part of this club. They love the tradition of it, and you know, it's only going to get bigger. But to me, for young lads, it's all about the atmosphere of the big crowds, probably the best stadium in the country. And like we've said before, the family atmosphere that's around this club, it's all right for kids. And when kids say to me that, well, Manchester United, they have good players there, and you know, it's very difficult to break through. Well, I think we've had a batch of players over the last 2 years who've proved that wrong. If you're good enough, you will come through. And there's no better example than that than Lee Sharp.
Do you like playing with the young kids yourself?
Yeah, I found it different over the last couple of years. At one time, I always used to just play, and I would play for the team, and that, but they were all experienced players, and they could all look after themselves, and you know, it was up to them mentally to approach the game in the right way and come on. But I just find over the last couple of years, you know, I've enjoyed playing with the young lads, and you can see that they're still learning the game, and you try and help them a lot more now because of them being young lads, and you try to bring them along, and you hope that they're going to have a great career in front of them. And that's why I loved winning the FA Cup last year, probably better than the 2 years before that, because I was
How do you feel when your name is linked with different jobs? For example, in the last 3 or 4 months, you've been linked with Newcastle United as their manager. You've been linked with Manchester United as their assistant manager. 12 months ago, there was even talk about you being player manager at Manchester United and people forgetting who's occupying the seat at the time. How do you feel about other people suggesting what you might do?
I don't really take much notice of the speculation part. I mean, quite a lot of people have said about myself and Alex Ferguson don't get on. And to me, that's a load of rubbish. I mean, I only read a report on Sunday saying, you know, there's no chance of me getting the assistant manager's job because I don't get on well with the boss. Me and the boss have always got on well. I've got every respect for, you know, the boss as a manager, and I think he's the same as me as a player, and he knows, as a captain, he knows that I would never be stabbing him in the back. So there's no problems between myself and the boss. He knows that he'll get 100% support from me as a player or whatever.
There's a vacancy.
There's a vacancy, but the manager will decide who's taking that on.
A very discreet answer. If you were offered the chance of being the assistant manager at Manchester United, would you see that as the perfect role for Bryan Robson, to learn the job, a managerial job, under an experienced manager?
Well, I think that's a perfect way for me to come into management. Not particularly just with Manchester United, but with hopefully a big club, as going in under an experienced manager who's been in the game for years. And to me, that would be a good grooming for if I ever do become a manager.
Fingers crossed?
They're always crossed.